Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome to my channel if you're new here. And this is a little bit of a bonus video today. I make an effort to read some nonfiction every single year, and unfortunately this year I only read 10 nonfiction books. That is a little bit lower than I was hoping to accomplish this year, but I did want to just shout out and highlight the 5 best of the best nonfiction that I read this year and give you some recommendations for nonfiction. The first book I'm going to be talking about is Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi, and this is a tome. This is a comprehensive history of racism in the United States and how it came to be and how we got here, essentially, through policy. And that's a big highlight of this book that I was most fascinated by, is how policy drove racism and then racism drove policy, and how it kind of became this vicious cycle over and over and over again. So this is a tough read, but I think this was so well crafted and well researched that I think it's a must read for everyone. I wanted to highlight White Tears, Brown Scars: How White Feminism Betrays Women of Color by Ruby Hamad. This was an excellent look at exactly what it says, how white feminism and white women weaponize their whiteness against women of color to uphold the white patriarchy. So even though some of these women say they are feminists, they are really only white feminists. And this gives a lot of good examples of what that looks like. And so I think this is a really interesting and a really a must read as well. This is also written by an Australian writer who so some of the concepts in here are not so US centric, which I really appreciated, because obviously I am from the United States, but just getting kind of an outside perspective on some of these topics and themes I think is really important, to not just center ourselves in these types of conversations about racism and feminism and how those two intertwine. This is also a really good jumping off point if you're into this topic, but I also recommend Hood Feminism, which is another really great look at white feminism and how it harms women of color. I think that book, as well as this one, provide a really good base of knowledge for getting into these topics. I feel like these are approachable and accessible, but still kind of challenge you to an extent. Another example of white feminism being harmful: They Were Her Property, White Women as Slave Owners in the American South, or whatever that subheading is. This was horrifying to read about how white women slave owners tortured their slaves, essentially, for 350 pages, and how they were able to basically uphold the patriarchy and their whiteness by disciplining their slaves and owning slaves in their own right. And I think this is a part of history that often gets missed when we're talking about slavery in the United States. We always talk about the white male landowners, but women owned slaves in their own right as well, and they were just as horrible, if not more horrible, than some of their white male counterparts. This is a tough read. This is really violent, but I think this is necessary for people to understand that white women are not exempt from the historical narrative. They are not innocent. They are complicit and active participants in slavery. I got a lot out of this book, I should say. It's not necessarily that I can enjoy this type of content, but I did get a lot out of this book, as well as the previous 2 books I did discuss. A young adult memoir I have to talk about is All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, and this was so powerful for me. This was about it's a memoir of George and his life, kind of growing up, figuring out his queer identity, and some of his life experiences that go along with that. And I feel like this is a must read for children, teenagers, to really grasp and to broaden their horizons around this topic, and I think it was such a perfect book for that age demographic. And I just really appreciated this. I cried a couple of times. This is really hard-hitting and emotional, but again, I think this one is so important to talk about and to recommend to young readers in particular. Finally, a kind of uplifting and a kind of happy nonfiction. We have The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. Now, this is my only John Green that I've ever read, but this was stupendous. This was not what I expected it to be at all. It is a series of essays where the author is focusing on an element of the human experience and giving it essentially a star rating. For example, there's a particular species of bird that he's rating out of 5 stars or whatever. You know, air conditioning, and how important it is in our modern society to have air conditioning, and he rates that experience out of 5 stars. And so this had some very serious topics in it, but the tone of this overall narrative and this essay collection is very uplifting and hopeful, and I think that's why I loved it so much, is that it really made me think about some things, and there were some heavy themes in there, but I ended up smiling almost the whole time. And that's a really rare thing to pull off, especially in nonfiction. That's it. That's just a quick little video highlighting the 5 best nonfiction I read this year. I hope you got some good recommendations from this video, and I would love to know if you have any nonfiction recommendations for me in the comments down below, as I definitely want to explore more nonfiction in 2023. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon. Bye!